Hey my loves, welcome or welcome back. Today I want to talk about the Temperance card in the tarot and why I think this card can represent non-binary gender, gender non-conformity, and general queerness. And to do this, we're going to look at two figures from Greek mythology, Eris and Hermaphroditus. This is a VR to the tag Top Tarot Trumps that was started by the lovely Marsha of Musings by Marsha. So in this video, I'm going to show 5 examples of my favorite Temperance tarot cards and explain why I feel represented as a queer person by this card. We're going to begin here with Eris. These two cards are from the Mythic tarot and the Greek mythology reading cards. I know one's an oracle card, not a tarot card, but they both show Eris. And a quick note as we start, I will probably say Iris more, the English pronunciation, because I think, especially with my accent, the name Iris with an I can sound really similar to Eris with an E, and I don't want to be confusing, and also I'm probably not saying it right anyway. So I'm just going to do my best, but please forgive the way I pronounce any of these names. Her name's probably a good place to start. In Greek, Iris means rainbow. Eris with an EI means messenger, and ero apparently could mean I join. So you can already kind of see that her name refers to the rainbow, the concept of a messenger, and the joining of things. So in mythology, Iris first appeared as a messenger for both Zeus and Hera, the king and queen of the gods. In later stories, she became kind of more closely associated with Hera in particular. And as a messenger, some stories have her taking a human form, and in those stories she travels using the rainbow, sort of like a road. But there are other stories where she is the rainbow itself. I don't think I have to go too deep on the links between the rainbow and the queers, but this is definitely one aspect of Iris that I think makes her a bit of a queer icon. It's thought that geographically, ancient Greeks would most often have seen a rainbow connecting the ocean and the clouds, and so for that reason, Iris is basically the combination of sea and sky. Some genealogies have her father being an ocean god and her mother a cloud nymph, and one of her main jobs is refilling the clouds using the water from the ocean. So she's basically the water cycle, and I just think that's really fascinating, this idea of picking up water and placing it in the sky to cause rain and then to pick it up again. Probably a long time before we understood what evaporation is. I think that's a great story. And by virtue of being that combination of elements, she's also able to travel through water. In some myths, she delivers messages deep under the ocean. So not only can she travel through the skies via the rainbow, she can travel to the depths of the ocean. And it doesn't stop there, because in her role as a messenger, she's also able to enter and return from the underworld, which very few were able to do. I think that ability to have a sort of foot in both worlds, so to speak, is a trait that feels really queer to me. A lot of queer people are drawn to Persephone, a goddess who spends part of her time in the underworld and part above, constantly cycling between them. And I think one reason for that is that we know what it's like to live between two worlds. There's an obvious comparison there to non-binary gender. I know as a person who's neither a man nor a woman, I can feel a little bit like I have one foot in each. But there's also just the divide between cishet spaces and queer ones. No matter what flavor of queer you are, there's a good chance that your experience is really different between these two spaces. Some people sadly only have acceptance amongst peers, queer peers. But yeah, some people have to be like closeted or stealth for safety or comfort, some or all of the time, and that can feel a little bit like being in two parts or having two selves. It's not always in a negative way. Sometimes I feel like I am a bit of that messenger or combiner. Is combiner a word? Like when I'm in cishet spaces, maybe sometimes I'm the first agender person that some people have met. So it can be a little bit like being the ambassador, which is odd. I don't think it should be mandatory for queer people to like explain ourselves or make a good impression or anything like that. But I do sometimes feel like just by being friendly and approachable, it does sometimes help to lower people's apprehensions about gender nonconformity. So there's almost that messenger role too there that relates to Iris and that I can relate to. Now, the ability to enter and exit the underworld is shared by Iris with another divine messenger, Hermes. In ancient art, they both usually carried the messenger's staff, or caduceus, but another thing that Iris was often shown carrying was a water jug, which makes her again perfect for the Temperance card. The artwork on this card is from a painting, circa 1793, and it shows Iris doing one of her other jobs, which was carrying water from the river Styx back up to Olympus for the gods to swear oaths on. So once again, that idea of combining one thing with another, combining the underworld and Olympus. We can see in both of these cards the iris flower. It got that name because iris flowers can come in a huge variety of colours, just like the rainbow. And I think the inclusion of these flowers is also great symbolism. If you've ever grown irises, you know that they're dormant for most of the year. They only have that beautiful flower for a relatively short time, depending on the variety, but then they go back to dormancy. They aren't much to look at when they're dormant, but the dormancy helps to protect them during the harshness of autumn and winter, and then, like Persephone, they rise again in the spring. Marsha mentioned in her Temperance videos that this card is often associated with Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty, and I think that's interesting that so far we've seen some similarities between Iris, Hermes, and Persephone, and now we can add Aphrodite. Both Iris and Aphrodite are associated with the ocean. Both are considered by different sources to be the mother of Eros, god of love and sex. And I talked a bit about Aphrodite and Eros in my video on the Emperor and Empress cards and how that relates to queer identity, so I won't go into it too much here. But I think all of these figures can in some way represent the meaning of the Temperance card. This group of Iris, Hermes, Persephone, and Aphrodite honestly sounds like my dream blunt rotation. I think they all represent temperance traits, things like harmony, combination of elements or aspects, resolution of conflict, compromise, messages, and balance. The next card I want to show is from a deck that I literally just got. And this Temperance is very similar to the previous, as it does depict Iris, but this artist has, in a way, combined Iris with another figure from Greek mythology, Hermaphroditus. And this is the Odyssean tarot. Hermaphroditus was a child of Aphrodite and Hermes, and was said to be a perfect balance of male and female. This obviously fits really well for the Temperance card with the idea of balance and harmony. I'm sure you can see why it resonates for me. The guidebook mentions a few figures from ancient history who are said to be intersex or display intersex-like traits, which I think is fantastic. It goes into a lot of detail about non-binary genders historically, and as a person who lives outside of the gender binary, this representation really resonated for me. Reading the guidebook gave me a real feeling of being included and recognized. It feels really welcoming to be represented and acknowledged. I know we're getting a wider range of tarot decks now from diverse creators, but it still feels a little exceptional and definitely special to see such care given to queer representation. I love Hermaphroditus, and again, I mentioned them in my video on the Emperor and Empress. I'll put a link in the description, but I think this is someone who I definitely feel I can relate to, and I just think it strikes a perfect balance for the card of Temperance, if you'll forgive how cheesy that is to say. The fourth card I wanted to show today is, of course, from the Fyodor Pavlov. I can't not. Marsha mentioned this one briefly in one of her Temperance videos, but essentially the author has deliberately drawn this angel as a masculine figure to show that kind and comforting traits can be masculine. I love the art of this one, of course, but I also notice the iris flowers here, like we discussed earlier, so it fits wonderfully with our little group of iris temperances. And lastly, this card is from the Animal Totem Tarot. I first chose this one because of the rainbow, which, as you can see now, links it in really nicely with the other cards. But I also think it's really clever of these creators to use the flamingo to represent temperance. We can see it's in this beautiful, calm and serene sort of background, which definitely evokes the energy of temperance, and its one foot is raised, which shows the combination of standing in water and standing in air. But it's really clever when you consider that factoid about why flamingos are pink. So just in case you haven't heard this, flamingos are pink because of their diet. The proteins they eat turn their feathers that color. If they aren't eating properly or if they're sick, then they become more pale and less pink. So the guidebook for this one says that our exterior can reflect our interior and vice versa. And I think this is a great way to make that point. The book talks about things like sleep and nutrition, which I do think is a good interpretation for temperance. The idea being that if we're caring for our physical body's needs, that positively affects our emotional state, and with a positive emotional state and frame of mind, we're more capable of tending to our physical body's needs, so it's kind of a cycle. But I think equally you could look at the mental diet aspect. If you're intaking things that are good for you, like good relationships, good media, good thoughts, then I think that can show on the outside. It might not always be visually, but I definitely think, for example, watching a lot of depressing media can make our body feel kind of physically weaker, or sometimes I even get like nauseous or headache from that kind of thing. Whereas listening to uplifting music could suddenly make us feel more energetic. Spending time with people who judge us or make us feel bad can have us kind of physically shrink ourselves, whereas spending time with people who accept us for who we are has us more able to stand tall, in a manner of speaking. So I think the phrase that comes to mind for me is, like this flamingo, being able to show your true colours. So that has been my 5 favourite Temperance cards. If you've watched all the way, thank you for listening to me talk about Greek myths so much. I had a lot of fun putting this one together and thinking about what temperance can mean to me. Thank you again to Marsha for starting this tag. Go check out her videos if you haven't. She has a very extensive knowledge of tarot history and symbolism. And if you liked this video, I would love a like. Subscribe if you're not already. If you are, thanks, that's very cool of you. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.